Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. We're going to start off today. We have a short presentation we'll go through, and then we will open it up for discussion afterwards. So if you can, for the first couple minutes, we'll hold questions until we get to the end of this. So today is the designated state entity peer discussion, and we are going to be talking about Section 4 of the state plan. So one of these slides, on slide 4, there is a link to the instructions and the instrument. So if you do not have those, highly recommend downloading those and reading that over. It will take you to the latest instrument for the state plan. If you have old versions from the last time we did this, the documents have been slightly updated, so it is important to make sure you have the most up-to-date version of the instructions and the template. A note on that, for all of the instructions, the language that is not included in the actual instrument itself, those are in italics. So the reason why we're talking about this today, Section 4 is all about the designated state entity. So if you are newer in a role with the designated state entity, or if you've been around for a while, this is an area where the DSE has a lot of portions to have conversations with. It's a really good place for the networks to have some productive conversations to make sure everyone has a full understanding of what is going on. So in the instrument, you will actually name the organization, the agency that is your DSE, and that they will serve as the DSE for that state to receive, administer, and account for funds made available to the state under Title VII, Chapter 1, Part B of the Act on behalf of the state. And it starts off by listing the responsibilities of the designated state entity. And that is to receive, account for, and disperse funds received by the state under this chapter based on the plan. Provide administrative support services for a program under Part B and a program under Part C in a case which the program is administered by the state under Section 723. Keep such records and afford such access to such records as the administrator finds to be necessary with respect to the programs. Submit such additional information and retain not more than 5% of these funds received by the state for any fiscal year under Part B for the performance of the services outlined in paragraphs 1 through 4. So the very first section that there is a response that has to be provided is Section 4.2, and this is the administration and staffing. So the instrument language includes the administrative and staffing support provided by the DSE. The instructions give you a little bit more of the content that needs to be included in this. And that includes explaining how the DSE will demonstrate that not more than the 5% of the Part B appropriation, including state match, will be used on administrative cost. When DSE employees serve as staff to the Silk, describe how the DSE will ensure that the Silk has the ability to hire, fire, and supervise such staff. And to describe how the DSE will assure that such staff will not be assigned to other projects and activities that would create a conflict of interest with the silk and their responsibilities. Section 4.3 are state imposed requirements. So in this section, you have to look at, are there state laws, regulations, rules, or policy relating to the DSE's administration, funding, or operation of IL programs, and or establishment, funding, and operation of the silk? Any rules or policies implementing any federal law, regulation, or guideline that is beyond what would be required to comply with 45 CFR 1329, and anything that limits, expands, or alters the requirements for the spill. So this is a section, if there are specific things within your own state that may interfere with the ability to fulfill roles and responsibilities as the DSE, or things that may interfere with the management of any of the funding. There's sometimes things that do come up, but this is where you should be addressing any of those things. Or if there's things that you do beyond what is required. So if there's certain reporting, if there's certain processes that your DSE has to follow for anything, any of that is required by the state should be included here. So the instructions further go on to describe any requirements. So this is in regard to the establishment and operation of the silk. So in your state, are there those policies and procedures or state laws that interfere with the establishment and operation? The provision of and use of state funding for independent living services and or the silk? Any other requirements having a direct impact on the silk, sills, IL services, and or process of funding? So you also describe how the DSE will ensure compliance with state requirements without restricting the autonomy of the silk in fulfilling of its duties, authorities, and responsibilities. Section 4.4, the grant process and distribution of funds. So the instrument says to provide the grant process, policies, and procedures to be followed by the DSE and awarding of the grants of Part B funds. The instructions include describe the process, policies, and procedures to be followed by the DSE and the awarding of grants of Part B, including the process for soliciting proposals, development of format for proposals, process for reviewing proposals and who the reviewers will be, process for evaluating performance and compliance of grantees, and specify any difference for continuing funding versus new awards. So this is one of those areas where making sure that accurate information is included, that everyone is aware of, so that you don't have surprises. This is a way to also protect everyone involved in here, that if the situation comes up that, the joyful time that we suddenly would get a lot of new Part B funding and new grant process is going to start, this should be where everyone looks to first to see what process is going to be implemented in issuing out a new Part B award. Section 4.5 is the oversight process for Part B funds. So the instrument says the oversight process to be followed by the DSE, and the instructions, the oversight process for Part B with or without Part C funds received, and the oversight by the DSE. Other funds that are included in 1.5, which is the financial plan, excluding section 722 Part C funds, and other oversight activities. And there is a note, section 1.4, the evaluation. The instructions include compliance of SILs receiving Part B funds for general operations is the responsibility of the DSE with respect to the Part B funding. The process for that oversight must be negotiated and included in section 4.5 of the spill. So again, very, very important section to have a conversation within your state about, because whatever the oversight and monitoring process is should be detailed and included in the state plan. So again, you're not going to have surprises. You're not going to have something come up that impacts how the program is being run, operated, and this should be that first place that everyone can look to when monitoring activities are beginning. Section 722 versus section 723 states. So this is section 4.6, and it's you check mark which category you fall into. 722 refers to section 722 of the Rehabilitation Act, which addresses Title VII Part C funding for states in which federal funding exceeds state funding of SILs. Section 722 state DSEs do not administer federal funding to grantees under Part C of the Act. Section 723 refers to Section 723 of the Rehabilitation Act, which addresses Title VII Part C funding for states in which state funding exceeds federal funding of SILs. Section 723 state DSEs may apply to ACL to administer the federal funding to grantees under Part C of the Rehabilitation Act. So section 4.7 is for 723 states. And the instrument language says order of priorities for allocating funds amounts to centers agreed upon by the SILC and the centers, and any differences from the regulations, how state policies, practices, and procedures governing the awarding of grants to centers and oversight of the centers are consistent with the regulations in 45 CFR 1329.5.6 and 0.22, and the oversight process to be followed by the DSE. The instructions state to describe the order of priorities for allocating funds, how the agreement of the SILC and SILs was secured, and differences, if any, from the priorities in the regulations. So describe the process, the policies and procedures to be followed in the awarding of grants of Part B and Part C funding, process for soliciting, development of format for proposals, process for reviewing proposals and who the reviewers will be, process for evaluating performance and the compliance of grantees. The above must also specify the differences for continuation funding versus new awards, and to describe the oversight process for Part C and Part B, alone or in combination with federal funds. Other funds included in section 1.4 of the financial plan, and other oversight activities. And I accidentally left section 5 slide in there. So for ongoing technical assistance, as always, here is Paula McAwee's contact information. There are additional resources, there are links when you have the PowerPoint slides for the Rehabilitation Act, the independent living regulations, the state plan instructions and instrument, and the SILC indicators. So with that,